It wasn't the fastest car. It wasn't the most powerful. But somehow, it became the most unforgettable. When Doc Brown rolled out that gleaming stainless steel DeLorean and shouted, "We're going back to the future," a legend was born. Yet behind the time-traveling myth lies one of the strangest automotive stories ever told, a tale of ambition, failure, and movie magic that refused to die. Think about it. Out of every car in 1985, why did the creators of Back to the Future choose the DeLorean DMC-12, a car infamous for struggling to hit 88 miles per hour, the very speed needed to travel through time? The answer, as it turns out, is full of irony, absurdity, and pure cinematic genius. Because this car wasn't just about stainless steel panels and gull-wing doors. It was about style over speed, dream over reality, and a little bit of madness that changed pop culture forever. Today, we're diving deep into 20 weird facts about the DeLorean DMC-12 details that reveal how this underpowered, over-engineered machine became a timeless icon. From doors inspired by aerospace engineering, to windows too small for a drive-thru, from a coffee grinder that powered Mr. Fusion to a gold-plated edition, nobody wanted this story will make you see the DeLorean like never before. So buckle up, because where we're going, we don't just need roads. We need curiosity, nostalgia, and maybe a better alternator. This is the story of how a stainless steel dream built on impossible ambition and countless mistakes somehow became the car that defined time travel. 20. The Speedometer Lie. The most famous movie speed in history, 88 mph, was something the real DeLorean could never even show. The stock speedometer stopped at 85 mph. Federal law in the early 80s limited every car's gauge to that number, hoping to discourage speeding. Spoiler alert, it didn't. But for Back to the Future, prop artists had to handcraft a custom 140 mph gauge just for those few shots. Ironically, the real car struggled to reach 85 even on a good day. 19. The gold car disaster. Imagine it, a DeLorean, but dipped entirely in 24-karat gold. That wasn't a dream cooked up by a cocaine-fueled ad executive. It actually happened. In 1981, American Express partnered with the DeLorean Motor Company to offer 100 gold-plated DMC-12s exclusively to their Gold Card members. The price $65,000, over $200,000 in today's money. For that, you got a slow, heavy car that screamed "rob me" the moment you parked it. Only 2 people actually bought one through the official program. 2 out of 100 planned. A third car was built later from leftover parts and odd Frankenstein stitched together from boxes of unused gold panels sitting in a warehouse. The extra weight from the gold made an already sluggish car even worse, and it instantly became a parody of 1980s excess, a gilded failure rolling on stainless dreams. But here's the twist: those 3 gold DeLoreans are now among the rarest cars on the planet. One even sold at auction for over $100,000, a price that says more about nostalgia than performance. What started as a marketing flop ended up becoming an accidental legend, proof that even disasters can shine. 17. Aerospace door technology. The DeLorean's famous gull-wing doors look futuristic, but they weren't just for style. They're powered by the same kind of technology used in fighter jets. The torsion bars and door mechanisms were designed by Grumman Aerospace, the same company that helped build the Apollo lunar module. These weren't ordinary hinges. They were cryogenically treated to 300 degrees SAF to strengthen their molecular structure. That's right, the same science that helped send astronauts to the moon was keeping DeLorean doors from smashing people's heads. Those heavy doors required a balance between strength and grace. So engineers combined torsion bars with gas struts for backup, essentially giving the car both a belt and suspenders. It might sound excessive, but it worked. Even after 4 decades, many DeLoreans still open and close perfectly. A feat that most regular cars from the same era can't claim. Underneath all the stainless flash, this was serious aerospace-grade over-engineering, and one of the rare parts of the DeLorean that actually worked better than advertised. 17. The parking advantage. Now here's something that surprises even DeLorean owners. Those giant gull-wing doors, they actually make parking easier. While they look like they'd need an airport hangar to open, the truth is the opposite. A DeLorean's doors only need 11 inches of side clearance to swing open, far less than a typical car door, which usually needs almost 3 feet. John DeLorean marketed this as a selling point. Perfect for tight city spaces, the ad said, and they weren't wrong. The doors open upward and slightly outward, thanks to a clever hinge system with multiple pivot points. The motion is part art, part physics. But of course, there's always a catch. While side clearance isn't a problem, vertical clearance is. Those doors need at least 1 to 2 feet of space above the car. So while you can squeeze into a tight spot, you'd better not park under a low ceiling, unless you enjoy denting both your door and your pride. Still, for 1981, this was revolutionary thinking. A futuristic sports car that actually cared about real-world parking. That's innovation wrapped in stainless steel. 16. The Toll Window Mystery. If you've ever seen a DeLorean up close, you might have noticed something odd, that tiny square window inside the larger one. It's not for ventilation. It's for paying tolls. Yes, really. The car's unique gull-wing door design meant there was nowhere to hide a full window mechanism inside the thin frame. When engineers realized this too late, they came up with a desperate fix, a drop-down mini window just big enough for your hand to stick out. They called it the toll booth window, though mail slot might have been more accurate. You have to unlock it, manually sliding a little latch to drop it down, then push it back up afterward. No power controls, no convenience, just old-school frustration, wrapped in modernist design. Now imagine this: you pull into a drive-thru hungry for a burger. You reach for the window switch and remember there isn't one. You can't roll down the window, you can barely fit your arm through the slot, and in the end, you have to open the entire gull-wing door just to grab your bag of fries. It's ridiculous, but it's also perfectly DeLorean. Beautiful to look at, maddening to live with. The deeper you look, the clearer it becomes. The DMC-12 wasn't just a car. It was a contradiction on wheels, a symbol of genius ego and unintended comedy. And that's exactly why people still love it. 15. The price tag deception. When John DeLorean founded his company, he promised a futuristic sports car that ordinary people could actually afford. He even baked that dream into the name itself, DMC-12. The 12 stood for 12,000, the car's supposed price tag. It sounded perfect, a stainless steel mid-engine dream machine for the price of a mid-range Corvette. But the fantasy crashed into the cold wall of reality. By the time the DMC-12 hit showrooms in 1981, its price had more than doubled to $25,000. That's like advertising a $30,000 sports car today and selling it for $65,000. Why the massive jump? Because almost everything about the DeLorean was expensive. The stainless panels, the Lotus design chassis, those Aerospace hinges. They all drained the company's finances before the first car even rolled off the line. To make things worse, DeLorean couldn't back out. The DMC-12 name had already been trademarked and printed on brochures, so they kept it a permanent reminder of a broken promise. Even at $25,000, the company was losing money on each car. Every DeLorean that left the factory was a financial wound in shiny steel. It was an ambitious dream that quite literally priced itself out of existence. 14. The stainless steel secret. That beautiful brushed steel body is what makes the DeLorean iconic, but it's also what fooled the world. Because those panels, they're purely decorative. Underneath that gleaming armor hides a fiberglass body bolted onto a steel backbone frame borrowed from Lotus. The stainless panels don't support anything, they just look expensive. DeLorean's original plan was for the stainless steel to be part of the structure, but that proved too heavy and far too costly. So engineers compromised fiberglass core steel spine and stainless wallpaper on top. Each panel could be unbolted and replaced individually, almost like pieces of Lego. Scratch a door. Just swap it out. And if you didn't want to replace it, you could literally buff the scratch away with a Scotch-Brite pad, the same kind used in your kitchen sink. It's the only car in history you can repair with household cleaning tools. Practical maybe, durable definitely, but structural not even close. It's one of those quirks that made the DMC-12 both brilliant and ridiculous an exotic car, with a body made for polishing, not racing. 13. The horsepower disappointment. Now let's talk about the car's biggest betrayal, its engine. You'd expect a car that looked like a spaceship to move like one, but under the hood, or more accurately behind the rear seats, sat a modest 2.85-liter PRV V6, making just 130 horsepower. That's less power than a modern Honda Civic. It was a shared design between Peugeot Renault and Volvo, hence PRV. Originally, it was meant to be a V8, but the oil crisis forced engineers to chop off 2 cylinders and call it a day. The result, an uneven, odd-firing V6 that sounded like a sick lawnmower trying to yawn. Car and Driver famously called it agricultural. That's journalist speak for it drives like a tractor. Performance was equally embarrassing, 0 to 60 in over 10 seconds. In Europe, where emissions rules were looser, the same engine made about 170 horsepower. But in the US, smothered by catalytic converters and air pumps, it barely had enough punch to get out of its own shadow. John DeLorean had dreamed of building a Corvette killer. Instead, he got a futuristic turtle that could barely outrun a Volkswagen Rabbit GTI. A beautiful body with the heart of a commuter car. That irony alone sums up the entire DeLorean saga. 12. The turbo that never was. But what if the DeLorean had the power it deserved? It almost did. A company called Legend Industries built several twin-turbo prototypes for DMC in 1981. These weren't backyard mods, they were factory-approved, fully engineered systems with upgraded fuel delivery, custom exhaust manifolds, and cockpit-mounted boost gauges. The twin-turbo DMC-12 could finally sprint from 0 to 60 in under 6 seconds, nearly twice as fast as the stock version. It was everything the car was meant to be. Dealers were ready to sell it as an upgrade for about $7,000. Expensive, yes, but transformative. Then disaster struck. In 1982, DeLorean Motor Company went bankrupt before the turbo project could launch. The parts, the tooling, the plans, all of it was scrapped overnight. Only a handful of prototypes survived, most of them test mules or incomplete builds. Today, those rare turbo DeLoreans are collector gold. When one surfaces, it sends fans into a frenzy because they represent a future that almost existed. If the company had managed to release them in time, the story of the DMC-12 might have been completely different. Instead, it became one of history's great what-ifs. 11. The nose-high mystery. Ever noticed how every DeLorean seems to lean back, nose pointed to the sky, like it's about to take off? That wasn't a design choice. It was a blunder. You'd think a car engineered by Lotus would have perfect balance. But somewhere between the design phase and production, someone decided to save money by using identical springs on both the front and rear. Problem is, the engine's in the back, meaning the rear end is far heavier. Equal springs, or unequal ride height. So every DMC-12 left the factory looking like it was perpetually climbing a hill. The nose-high stance wasn't just weird looking, it actually hurt performance. The lifted front trapped air underneath, creating aerodynamic lift. Not ideal for a car that already struggled to stay planted. Later owners corrected the problem with custom springs, finally giving the DeLorean the stance it should have had all along. But purists, they prefer the flawed look. Because in a way, that imperfection, that accidental quirk, is part of what makes the DeLorean the DeLorean. A mistake turned into a signature. Failure turned into identity. 10. The staggered wheel setup. The DeLorean doesn't just look strange, it drives strange too. If you've ever noticed the wheels, they're mismatched. 14 inches in the front, 15 in the back. This wasn't a design flourish. It was a desperate attempt to fix the car's dangerous handling. With the engine mounted behind the rear axle, the DMC-12 was extremely tail-heavy, like a pendulum waiting to swing. Smaller front wheels were meant to reduce rotating mass up front, while larger rears provided extra grip to keep all that weight under control. In theory, it worked. In reality, it barely helped. The uneven setup made the car understeer, meaning the front end gave up first in corners. If you panicked and lifted off the throttle mid-turn, the rear could suddenly swing around in a violent snap of oversteer. Many owners found themselves facing the wrong way in ditches. To make things worse, the staggered wheels meant you couldn't rotate your tires, so the rears wore out long before the fronts. Modern owners fix this with balanced 17 or 18-inch wheels all around, but doing so changes the look, and the DeLorean's charm was always tied to its flaws. It's another reminder that this car's beauty and danger live side by side, an icon born from imbalance in every sense of the word. 9. The wandering antenna. Even the DeLorean's antenna couldn't make up its mind. Early production cars had sleek high-tech antennas embedded right inside the windshield glass. It was futuristic until they realized the stainless steel body acted like a giant Faraday cage blocking radio signals. The solution? A clunky manual mast on the fender that you had to pull up by hand like it was still 1959. For a $25,000 car of the future that didn't exactly scream innovation. Customers complained. Loudly. So the engineers moved it again, this time to a power antenna hidden in the rear quarter panel, which rose automatically when the radio turned on. Slick, sure. But now, the factory had 3 different antenna setups in just 3 years of production. Parts compatibility became a nightmare. Mechanics couldn't keep track of which version went with which car. Today, restorers treat antenna placement like a secret code that reveals a car's production history. It's such a small detail, but somehow it perfectly sums up the DeLorean story. Brilliant ideas, rushed fixes, and a trail of confusion left in their wake. 8. The hood evolution. You wouldn't think a hood could start fights, but in DeLorean circles, it can. Between 1981 and 1983, the DMC-12 went through 3 different hood designs. The first version had deep grooves down the center and a small gas flap door so you could refuel without opening the entire hood. Collectors love this one. It's the rarest. Then came the second version, same grooves, but no gas flap. Why, no one's entirely sure. Possibly leftover parts, possibly cost-cutting, possibly chaos. Finally, the last generation dropped the grooves altogether for a clean, smooth surface with a DMC badge. Each version tells a piece of the company's unstable story. Production changes happened on the fly, with no grand plan, just whatever could keep the assembly line moving another week. Today, those differences matter. Car shows have seen heated debates over which hood is authentic. The truth is, they all are. Each one represents a different chapter in the DeLorean's short but turbulent life. 7. The right-hand drive confusion. The DeLorean was built in Northern Ireland, yet it was only officially made for left-hand drive markets. That didn't sit well with fans in the UK and Australia, who were desperate to own one. So a few companies took matters into their own hands. The most famous was Wooler Hodak, a firm authorized by DeLorean to perform professional conversions. They completely re-engineered the car pedal, steering column, dashboard, everything moved to the right. Only a handful were built. Then there were the mysterious Axie Car's 3 right-hand drive units made under unknown circumstances, possibly factory experiments. Their origin stories are murky, but their existence is real. The problem? Because the DeLorean's layout was asymmetrical converting. It was a nightmare. Even the pedal box and door clearances didn't line up properly. Some amateur conversions cut corners, literally resulting in cars that were almost undrivable. Today, genuine right-hand drive DeLoreans are collector unicorns. When one comes up for auction, it can fetch 6 figures easily. Because in the strange world of DeLorean enthusiasts, nothing is more desirable than a car that technically shouldn't exist. 6. The Johnny Carson breakdown. Nothing kills a brand faster than a celebrity breakdown, and the DeLorean had one of the worst. Talk show legend Johnny Carson was one of the company's first celebrity owners. He loved the look, the doors, the attention. Until one evening while driving through Los Angeles, his car simply died on the side of the road. The culprit? A weak alternator. It couldn't handle the car's electrical load headlights. AC radio power windows all too much for an 80-amp system. Even at highway speeds, the alternator couldn't recharge the battery fast enough. The press had a field day. Headlines mocked Hollywood's broken time machine. For a company already struggling with delays and lawsuits, this was catastrophic PR. DeLorean quickly rolled out a fix upgrading future models with stronger alternators. But the damage was done. Johnny Carson's roadside embarrassment became a cautionary tale. Today, every DeLorean owner knows the first upgrade you do is the alternator. It's ironic that one of Hollywood's brightest stars helped doom a Hollywood icon. But maybe that's what makes the DeLorean story so haunting. It's a mix of brilliance and blunder of dreams that couldn't quite sustain their own spark. 5. The Back to the Future fleet. Most people think there was only one DeLorean in Back to the Future, but the truth is there were several, and at least one didn't survive. The production team built different cars for different purposes: close-up shots, stunts, and destruction scenes. The A car was the hero, the most detailed one used for close-ups. It had all the working gadgets, glowing time circuits, and of course, the iconic flux capacitor. That's the car you see most often, the one preserved today at the Petersen Automotive Museum in Los Angeles. Then there was the B car built for action. This was the stunt workhorse, the one that jumped curbs, skidded, and took hits. It was reinforced with roll cages and spare parts, and by the end of filming, it was barely recognizable. But perhaps the strangest of them all was the C-car and off-road DeLorean built on a Volkswagen chassis. It had raised suspension and four-wheel drive designed specifically for the dusty desert scenes in Back to the Future Part 3. Underneath it was basically a Baja Bug pretending to be a time machine. And yes, for the famous train collision scene, they actually destroyed a real DeLorean. No CGI, no models, just pure glorious 1980s practical effects. The irony: back then the car was still considered a failed novelty, not a collector's item. The crew saw it as disposable. Today, that same wreck would be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Several others were cannibalized for parts or simply vanished after filming. Every once in a while, a new movie used DeLorean resurfaces, setting off wild debates among fans about its authenticity. Because in the world of DeLorean, collecting movie history isn't just valuable, it's sacred. 4. The Coffee Grinder Fusion. If you've ever wondered how Mr. Fusion, Doc Brown's magical eco-friendly reactor, came to be, brace yourself. That futuristic device sitting on the DeLorean's tail in Back to the Future Part 2 was a coffee grinder. Specifically, a Krupp's Model 223 coffee grinder. The prop department needed something that looked sleek, futuristic, and vaguely scientific, but they were working on a tight budget. So instead of designing a complex prop, they just grabbed a Krupp's grinder, painted it silver, added a few hoses, and called it a day. If you look closely, you can still see part of the Krupp's logo under the fake plating. It's one of the best Easter eggs in movie history, a reminder that Hollywood's greatest illusions are often built from the most ordinary parts. The concept behind Mr. Fusion, a household device that turns trash into limitless energy, fit perfectly with the film's humor. It symbolized a future where technology is so advanced it becomes everyday. A nuclear reactor that looks like a kitchen appliance. Today, the Krupp's 223 has become a collector's item. A 30 coffee grinder now sells for hundreds on eBay, all thanks to its cameo as the world's most famous power source. It's a beautiful irony, a tool meant to brew coffee immortalized as the device that powers time travel. 3. The Mustang that wasn't. Believe it or not, the DeLorean almost wasn't the time machine. At one point, Ford tried to convince the filmmakers to use a Mustang instead. They offered money, product placement, and full corporate support. It would have been great advertising a Mustang racing through time, saving the day. But screenwriter Bob Gale had one perfect line that ended the conversation instantly. Doc Brown doesn't drive a Mustang. He was right. A Mustang was too common, too normal, too earthly. The DeLorean with its alien doors and stainless skin looked like it had fallen from another world. It wasn't just a car. It was a statement. The irony, of course, is that the DeLorean itself was a failure, while the Mustang was a legend. But that's what made it perfect. A car born from ambition and collapse, chosen to symbolize time travel. A vehicle that promised the future, even as its own company was collapsing into the past. That decision didn't just save the movie, it made cinema history. Because can you imagine Back to the Future without the DeLorean? Neither can anyone else. 2. The Porsche sound swap. That deep throaty growl you hear when Marty floors it. Yeah, that's not a DeLorean. The actual DeLorean's PRV V6 sounded awful weak, uneven, almost broken. The sound team tried to use real recordings, but found them unusable. So they replaced it with something sexier, a Porsche 928 V8. They recorded the Porsche revving at different speeds and layered those sounds into the film, perfectly syncing them with the DeLorean's movements. The result was cinematic magic, a car that looked like the future and sounded like power. It fooled everyone. For decades, fans assumed the DeLorean really made that sound. Even some owners were disappointed when they realized their own cars didn't roar like the movie version they wheezed. Some owners even modify their exhausts today to mimic the Porsche tone, chasing an illusion created in a sound booth 40 years ago. It's poetic, really, a car that looked better than it performed and sounded better than it ever could. Even in the audio, the DeLorean was pretending, and that's part of what made it unforgettable. 1. The Petersen Museum Star. After all the fame, all the jokes, and all the failures, one DeLorean survived to become a true legend. The original hero A-car, lovingly restored and preserved at the Petersen Automotive Museum in Los Angeles. This isn't a replica. It's the car, the same one Marty McFly sat in. The same one Doc Brown slammed his fists on, the same one that made movie history. After filming it, spent years touring theme parks and exhibits collecting dust and losing parts. By the early 2000s, it was in bad shape. Faded, stripped, forgotten. Then a group of dedicated fans stepped in. They researched every bolt, every wire, every shot from the movie to restore it perfectly. The restoration took years and cost a fortune. But when it was finished, the result was breathtaking. Today, it sits behind glass glowing with blue flux lights surrounded by awestruck visitors. Grown adults tear up when they see it. Children press their hands to the glass. It's more than a car now. It's a memory machine, a tangible piece of cinematic history that lets people believe, if only for a second, that time travel might just be real. And that's the ultimate irony. A failed car from a failed company became immortal through Hollywood magic. 20 strange, brilliant, tragic facts. One impossible car. The DeLorean DMC-12, the stainless dream that drove straight out of failure and into forever. The DeLorean DMC-12 was never meant to be perfect. It was clunky, underpowered, and doomed almost from the start. Yet somehow, this strange stainless steel wedge transcended its flaws and became one of the most recognizable vehicles in cinematic history. John DeLorean dreamed of revolutionizing the car industry, and in a way he did. Not through sales or innovation, but through storytelling. Because in the hands of Hollywood, his flawed machine became something more, a time machine that united generations. It's the perfect metaphor. A car built on failure that became the symbol of second chances. A vehicle that couldn't quite conquer physics, but somehow conquered time itself. Even now, over 40 years later, the DeLorean stands as a reminder that legends don't need to be flawless. They just need to be unforgettable. So the next time you hear that faint hum of the flux capacitor, remember, where we're going, we don't need roads. Just a little imagination and a dream made of brushed steel.